Hey RCC family, my name is Sam. I'm one of the pastors here. I'm so glad you found us here online and you can watch one of these messages here online. The goal of these messages is to help you represent Jesus well right where you're at, and we're so glad you can do that here. If you'd like to get connected with a church, whether us as a staff or in different ways, you can go down to the links below. You can do that through the links to get connected. You can also go on social media and find us on social media through those links. And then finally, if you want to continue to support the ministries of RCC, you can find a way to give there. We're so excited that you're a part of this church family and that you want to continue to grow your faith and grow in your ability to represent Jesus well right where you're at. Our mission as a church is based on Colossians 3:17. And whatever you do or say, do it as a representative of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks through him to God the Father. That's our mission. Our mission is to represent Jesus well as individuals, as a church family. Everything we do with the awareness that it represents Jesus. In order to do that, it's important occasionally to take stock and to see where we are, to look ahead to where we're going, and to look ahead to how we're going to get there. In other words, it's important for us to know how we're going to grow in our capacity to show Jesus to the people in our lives and the community around us, which honestly feels more important with each passing day. To do this, every year, we take one Sunday out of all the weeks of the year, and we call it the State of the Church. And like they've been talking about all morning, that is today. Here we are, State of the Church 2026. I was almost going to say 2025, but I caught myself because it's just wild how fast time flies. But the goal today is a little bit different than a typical sermon. So just brace yourself. It's not going to be like you typically experience on a Sunday morning. It'll be a little bit different. The goal for today is three different things. The first goal is to review the previous year. We're going to look at how God has been working in and through RCC and just take a moment to take stock in some of the amazing things God has done in this church and through this church over the past year. But the second thing we're going to do is this. We're going to get a clear view of where we are as a church. And what I mean by that is we're going to look at the health of the church. We're going to look at what challenges we're facing, and we're going to look at the opportunities that we face as a church. So we'll address those things for a moment as well. And then the final thing that we'll do is we'll set a vision for how we as a church are going to meet the opportunities and the challenges in front of us and move in the direction God is calling us to go. So we're going to set some vision today of where we are headed as a church. So I'm not going to waste any time. We're going to jump right into it. Let's start with this past year. There has been so many good things that God has done in and through this church over the past year. As I was imagining this and thinking about it over the past little bit here, this past week, planning for today, I was reminded of the times that I've taught the Discover RCC class over the course of the year. And during these classes, I would often chat with a bunch of different people. I've talked with people who are brand new to faith. They're just starting to get an understanding of what this is all about. I've talked to people who have experienced some church hurt, some moments where they were in an unhealthy church and things did not go well for them and it was uncomfortable and hard and difficult. And I've also talked to people who just moved to this area and are looking to find a healthy church that they want to get involved with. And as I've chatted with them, they reminded me, especially this year, of how revolutionary church can be. Because as I chatted with those people, a few people in those classes with tears in their eyes shared with me how they felt more free, more hopeful, more purposeful, because they were beginning to see with renewed clarity, with extra clarity, this message of Jesus, who he is and what he means for their life and for us as a church together. It was changing them. And that matters. That's who I think of when I when I talk about how throughout this past year, our attendance at church has been a constant, a solid, good constant where we continue to be strongly attended every week. When people show up in this way, I think of people attending here not because it's a cool thing to have a lot of people here, but because each person that attends is finding their hope in Jesus, and that has an impact not in only today, but in every part of their life. In October and November, we had some of the strongest months that we've ever had, and then Christmas Eve was one of our largest Christmas Eve services in our 20 years as a church. That was amazing. That was wild. Attendance matters, but it doesn't matter because it's a big number. It matters because of what happens in people's lives when church is a part of their weekly routine. What happens in people's lives is their lives change. They change their outlook on life. They begin to have this message of Jesus resonate and go inside of them. And that looked like people saying, hey, my life has changed. I want to show that. And that was shown in one way through 26 people being baptized over the course of this last year. It was beautiful. It's amazing. One of the people who got baptized this past summer in the lake, they gave their faith story this past couple weeks ago on a Wednesday night during student life. She's an adult leader. And her story so clearly and meaningfully depicted how God has been at work in her life. Honestly, I stood there and sat in back, was shocked and in awe of it. It was beautiful. I love that we get to be a part of what God's doing in her life and in so many people's lives. Moments like that are a reason for us all to celebrate because it takes a whole church family to continue guiding people to know and follow Jesus. To do this well, our staff and volunteer teams have needed to grow. Last year, we hired an office manager in Alicia Bradley. She's done an incredible job helping in a number of different areas. We also brought on 4 college-aged residents who are growing their ministry chops and helping with a few different areas of ministry. They've been incredible. But it's not just staff. We do this all together. We're a church family. So many of you serve, as Meg was talking about earlier, many in volunteer leader roles, helping lead and guide various ministries that are essential to caring for and guiding our church family. Just this last week, I watched as an individual who leads our safety and response team help organize and then helped lead a group of volunteers in best practices for how to care for our church family in various situations. It was awesome. People dedicating their time to care for our church family. Speaking of that, we have a growing teams ministry, right? Full of people who are serving this church in these tangible, simple ways that have lasting impacts. And we got to celebrate that this last year. In November, we threw a big old RCC teams bash. We had a bunch of people here having a blast. We got a fun program and hung out together. And I think there's another picture, too, of just the people that were there that are serving. It was a great time. Another thing happened this past year was, and I'm honestly just really grateful for this. For us, I've been serving here on the team since 2010, and since 2022 as lead pastor, and we were able to take a sabbatical for the first time. My family was able to come with me for a good part of it, and this time provided a healthy and much-needed reset for us. It was a time where I was able to slow down, hear from God, and ultimately experience fresh vision for the future of RCC. And you all were amazing. You were amazing. The church stayed healthy while Meg and I were gone, which, way to go, good job, big deal. But during that time, we also hosted 6 pastors from across Wisconsin who offered fresh perspectives and had some fun teachings, and I loved hearing about what you guys thought about that. It was so good to know that we're part of a much bigger church, not just Wisconsin, but the whole world, and we get to do this together. In addition to those things, over the course of the year, we had 3 worship nights here and an epic summer concert out on the green that so many of you were at. The last of those 3 worship nights came at the end of 24 hours of constant prayer here in this building. It was an incredible moment to watch so many of you take time slots of 30 minutes and then be so frustrated when it was over too quickly. 30 minutes of prayer constantly felt so short, you found, and that was an amazing thing to hear. But what's more encouraging, and just as encouraging, was watching all year as more and more people have been willing over the course of this year to come forward at the end of a service and pray with somebody and receive prayer from people because you know and believe that God can work in your life through prayer. There's more. Student life, our middle and high school ministry continues to grow. About a year or so ago, it was at about 70 to 80 students a week, which we thought was amazing. And now it's been over 100, which is unbelievable. About 100 students attend on a regular basis every single Wednesday night here in Ripon. RCC Kids continues to thrive too. It just stands out for some reason, but I think they sang louder at the Christmas program than ever before. I don't know what was that. It just made me so happy. But I've read emails and heard comments from people who have been so grateful that their kids feel safe and loved when they attend RCC Kids. Not only that, we cared for our community. For example, like Mike talked about earlier, we packaged about 300 Christmas meals and stocked the food pantry. Like she said, we literally stuffed 2 vehicles to the brim. One was my vehicle, which contained, it was a lot of food. I couldn't believe we had so much to take over to the food pantry. These are good things. Not only these things, but we're growing our faith together. We're not doing this on our own little islands. The number of people engaged in community groups grew along with the number of groups we offer. We had 196 people involved in community groups in 2025. One of those groups is the Young Adults Community Group, and they meet here on Sundays, and it's so much fun to watch because here are these college students that I barely know, and a few other young adults will be out in the commons over there, and they'll just take up the comfy chairs, right, and then just start grabbing chairs from all over, what are you doing? I don't know you. But then we realize, hey, there they are, just setting up for the young adults group, and you just listen in on their conversations. I think I've gotten asked a couple random questions, theological, why are you guys are talking about that? That's amazing. You're processing these things. It's such a neat thing to be a part of and see. And like we just said, the next set of groups are launching in just a couple of weeks. Over the course of 2025, we offered 9 different sermon series that covered a range of topics and books of the Bible, all pointing to how we grow our relationship with Jesus and represent him well. All of this, all the things I've mentioned and so much more, I'm still just scratching the surface, we were able to do through the church family's continued generosity, through conservative money management and budgeting, and ultimately through the grace and provision of God. All of this we did while staying under budget for the whole year, yay. Additionally, this church family, all of us together generously gave above budget. That provided the means, in addition to paying our monthly mortgage payment on this building, to put an additional $100,000 toward the building loan. That's you guys. Can you guys give yourselves a round of applause for that? That is an unbelievable thing, to be able to do that in the midst of this kind of a season. Our mission as a church is to represent Jesus well. Throughout 2025, this church family has done it so well in visible ways. Because of these things, I believe I can say Ripon Community Church is exceptionally healthy. God has been at work here. We've been faithful together. It's been a gift to walk through this past year with all of you. Now, as excited as I am about where we are as a church in this moment, I'm also aware of 2 realities. God is just getting started here. There's so much good still in store as we stay faithful to God's call to us here. But we also face a number of opportunities and challenges moving forward, a number of realities. So before we get to where I'm convinced God is leading us to next, I want to acknowledge some of those realities, and I'm going to name 3 of them this morning. The first one is this: managing the complexities of a growing church. That's a challenge. With a growing church comes the need for a growing staff and the need to manage our resources well. And we've been searching for a family pastor for multiple years now. We've had some significant help from our residency program to sustain student life and RCC Kids. And Teresa Hacker, our RCC Kids director, has done great work, but she came out of retirement to help a couple years ago, and I'd really love for her, and I know she would love to spend more time with her grandkids, so we're still looking for that qualified person to lead that ministry. She's been such a godsend in the midst of these last couple of years. But we continue to search for that person, and we're beginning finally to see some really good movement there with some really qualified applicants applying. But as we keep growing, we'll need to keep hiring people to manage all the complexities that come with a church our size. Additionally, we'll need to continue to be wise with our finances. We've seen movement with paying down our mortgage this year, which is really encouraging, but we'll need to continue to be diligent about how we use our resources. You know this, you manage your own budgets. This is real life, and it's real life here in ministry too. In addition to managing the complexities of growing church, we also need to be aware of a cultural reality that is happening right before our eyes, right in our midst. The second thing, reality, opportunity, and challenge that we're going through is this: Gen Z and others are seeking faith or coming back to church. There seems to be a growing desire in this culture right now to find answers. Specifically, answers that feel more sturdy and lasting than what culture has been offering. Gen Z actually attends church more regularly than any other generation right now, which is wild. Y'all say, look, kids these days, guess what? You can't say it anymore. Like, that's a thing. You cannot, and boomers, the boomer generation, you're the least regular attenders of church. So it's going to be adults these days, I guess. Now, I'm just joking with you a little bit, but it's real, right? There's this wild thing, because it's not just Gen Z, it's every generation that's beginning to see this. Bible sales have skyrocketed. Christian music has grown in popularity. It's all across the spectrum of people that are beginning to see that faith matters more than ever. It is real. There's a swing happening right in front of us. And it will be important that we meet this moment, challenging people to grow their faith as fully as they can. I get the sense that a big part of this shift has been because people have been experiencing a culture that promises answers, but has not been able to deliver on them. The more authentic, the more honest and clear that we can be about our faith in Jesus and what it's all about, the better. People are looking for something solid and true. Giving people a robust faith that is rooted in truth will be essential to meeting this moment well. The third challenge or opportunity that we're facing is this: cultural and political tensions are spilling over into churches. Whether you watch the news or you avoid it, it's important that we're aware of these pressures. Recent events have only added to this pressure and tension. You can't go a week without it happening. I was in the locker room after working out the other day, and I was listening to two older gentlemen argue with each other. They were mad at each other. They didn't agree with each other. And I heard one of them say, quote, "You're so deeply wrong, you don't even know what wrong is." And honestly, it took everything in me not to speak up, because if you know me, that's my favorite thing to do in those moments, is just talk and like get in there and figure out some way to connect the two people and let's argue for fun. That's enjoyable for me, weirdly. I know, I'm trying to work on myself. But I didn't speak up. But as I left that locker room, it occurred to me that perfectly encapsulated this challenge we're going to continue to have to navigate. People are angrier, more opinionated, and less open to hearing other perspectives than ever before, especially when it comes to really personal things like faith and politics. Let me say at the forefront, I'm not here to give political commentary. That's not my job. But I will say, neither of those two men had any interest in getting rid of the log in their own eye before they addressed the speck in the other person's eye. Listening was not in either of their plans. This speaks to a reality that has become increasingly real for pastors. Some people want us to say the thing that agrees with their politics more than they want us to say the thing that's true about the Bible and Jesus. They're not necessarily willing to wrestle with how Jesus should impact their whole, complete lives. And we will be a church that teaches about Jesus and the Bible. We will not tell people who to vote for, but we will teach the gospel and challenge us all to apply it to every area of our lives, especially where it's uncomfortable to do so. This will be a challenge we'll need to navigate together. It won't be easy, but it's never been more important. I also want to say this. I love our church. I love how we've been willing to navigate these things in the past, and I'm so grateful for how we've done that over the years and will continue to do so in the future. We will continue to be guided by God, not by cultural pressures, the very best we can. We'll ask God to form our reactions and our actions. Let him be our guide. Jesus said something really interesting about how people will know who his followers are. He said this in John 13, said, here we go. So now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other. Just as I have loved you, you should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. And then later in John chapter 17, he says this. He says, I am praying not only for these disciples, but also for all who will ever believe in me through their message. I pray that they will be one. They will all be one, just as you and I are one, as you are in me, Father, and I am in you. And may they be in us so that the world will believe you sent me. There are two things that Jesus says will be clear about his followers, his disciples, people who are part of his church, his body, right? Our love for one another and our unity. These are the signs that we follow Jesus. This will be how we address this cultural reality. With a gospel-guided foundation, people will know that we're followers of Jesus. People will see us represent Jesus well through our love for one another and our unity. But let me be clear. Unity does not equal uniformity. Being unified does not require that we're clones of one another or that we agree on every last little detail. We can have different opinions and still worship together. Unity requires agreement on a few core essential truths and a way of living those out together. It requires that we as a church hold to core truths about who God is, most of all that salvation and life are found through trusting in Jesus alone. But it's not just what we believe. It's how we live out those truths together. Another way to ask the same question is this: how do we represent Jesus well together? Over the past year, the staff, leadership team, and I have been working on a revised set of language for our values, the things that we do because we follow Jesus. It's the how to representing Jesus well. The essential content of these values are timeless and core to what this church has always been about. So it's not like we're suddenly valuing different things. These are the values we've had since the beginning of the church. But we wanted to take time to refresh them in a way that helps us internalize them and live them out. We wanted to offer something solid to rally around so that we can be unified even more so in our mission to represent Jesus well. And this brings us to our vision for this year. This year, the biggest initiative we're taking on, the one that I believe will not only help us address the realities we're facing, but also set us on a path to even more fully represent Jesus well in this community and beyond in the years to come, is getting the following 6 values deep into our DNA as a church, living them out as individuals and as a church family. These values, we're expressing them as we statements, things we do, behaviors we exhibit. Because what values really are, when you drill them down, are literally behaviors. There's things you do that show what you value. They're actions or behaviors that show what you care about. So, this morning, I thought I'd walk through quickly each of those 6 values that we'll then talk about later in the next sermon series, but I want to start with this first one. We aspire to serve and lead like Jesus. We live in a world that is me-centric. What helps me? Imagine if our community was filled with people who who were less concerned with themselves and more concerned with how they could serve people and lead people like Jesus does? What would be different about your hardest relationships at work, your office, if you aspired to serve and lead like Jesus? What would be different between you and your spouse if you served them and led them like Jesus? What would be different about how our community values faith if people in our community were constantly in contact with people who serve and lead like Jesus? So much would be different. That's the first value. The second one is this: we worship through surrendered living. Worship is more than singing on Sunday. It's fun when we get to do that together. It's beautiful. It's amazing. We just did. I love it. But how do we live that way? How do we live that kind of worship? What if the way we represented Jesus all week long looked like surrendered living? What if you were able to view your work as worship? What if you viewed the places you serve as worship? What if you saw your finances through the lenses of worship? What if we as a church saw worship as synonymous with surrender? Surrender to God. What would change? Value number 3. We are on this mission together. There's something so powerful, something unbelievably compelling and encouraging and supportive and nurturing when you find yourself on a team with a clear mission. I've seen it in athletes as I've coached them. I've seen it in our church family when we took on this whole project that we're in almost a couple years later. I've seen it in moments when tragedy strikes and people work together to surround and care for people who are hurting. We can't miss the truth here. We are on a mission, and we're in it together. This is an all-church thing. We're more than individuals who show up for an hour on a weekend. We're part of a body of Christ, showing his goodness to the world and in the way that we live. We're on this mission together. Number 4, we pursue and welcome the one. Some of the most powerful stories in scriptures are told by Jesus. Think of the prodigal son story. Think of the lost sheep story, leaving the 99 to go and find the one. They're so powerful, these stories, because they show such care and compassion to people who are lost and struggling or at the end of themselves. We are and will continue to be a church that pursues people, that goes out to show people what Jesus' love looks like. We are and will continue to be a church that is utterly welcoming. No matter who you are, no matter what your past, no matter what you've gone through, you are welcome here. We will pursue and welcome people like Jesus pursued and welcomed people. Number 5, we are being transformed by Jesus. I don't know about you, but I'm not a finished product yet. I have not arrived. Has any of you? Anybody? Anybody arrived? None of us have, right? And the more aware of that we are, the better. This is a reality. And for you grammar nerds, this is purposefully in the present perfect tense. That's because we are in process. We will always be in process on this side of eternity. This has been and will continue to be a church that acknowledges that we're in process. We're being transformed by the renewing of our minds, as it says in Romans 12:2. We'll provide further opportunities for this throughout the year. We'll challenge people and challenge all of us to open ourselves up to Jesus doing his work inside of us. Finally, number 6. We invest in the next generation. We really are standing at a unique moment in history. A moment when the younger generations are wanting to experience this faith in deeper and deeper ways. They're taking opportunities to lead. They're consuming more faith-based information. They're taking notes more than anybody. On a Sunday morning, if you see a younger person, typically you find them out taking notes. On Wednesday nights, everybody takes notes, literally, like they've got pen and paper. Can you imagine? Like that really happens. A bunch of students, they're better listeners than on Sunday morning. It's weird, guys. I haven't experienced that in 10 years. It's amazing. It will be essential, though, as we do that, as they're trying to apply this stuff to their life in ways that challenge their own faith, it will be essential that we invest in them, but also that we challenge them, guard them against legalism and performance-based faith, but also help grow in them deeply biblical and deeply authentic faith in Jesus. This will take resources. This will take dedication and development work. But if we hold to this value, we will be part of raising a generation that God will use in powerful ways. These are our 6 values. We'll present them in some more detail at the church business meeting that follows second service today. But like I said a bit ago, it's more than that. If these things are going to make a difference, if they're going to be more than words on a page or on a website or plastered on a wall somewhere, they'll need to get deep into our DNA. They will very simply need to be how we roll as a church, as people, which is why this next sermon series is called How We Roll. How we roll, essentials for when the rubber meets the road. And when we're thinking about the rubber of our faith, it has a moment in everyday life where it meets the road of life, where they clash together, and we have to decide, how are we going to live this out? How are we going to actually do this? This will be the next series that we'll walk through. So 6 weeks starting next week, we'll get through one at a time, and I cannot wait to dig into it because it is going to be some hefty, good stuff to take on for ourselves these next 6 weeks. But it has to be more than that too. It can't just be like, okay, 6 weeks, we did it, we heard it, we're on to it, okay. We have to go further than that. It can't just be a moment where we say, oh, these are nice ideas. No, we have to and have these literally sink down into our bones. So all throughout the year, we're actually going to be shifting our classes. In the past, we had a Discover RCC class. This is going to replace them. We're going to have 3 classes now that go through these values and also address our beliefs as we go through this next year, where you can take these essential classes, RCC Essentials. And even if you've taken classes in the past year, I cannot recommend it enough. I would love for you to go through these classes to help them get into your bones, into your DNA as we do these things as a church, because they help guide how we represent Jesus well. But even if we do that, right? Even if we do that, it can't just be an intellectual thing. It has to be more than that. I mean, can you imagine if we lived these out? Can you imagine if we were a church that honored these God-given essentials for how to live life, especially when it gets hard? The world around us doesn't roll with these. The world around us says, it's all about me. I live for myself. I look out for me. I want to know what you'll do for me before I do anything for you. I'm good just as I am. I don't need to grow or to change. I'm fine. I like me how I am. And who cares about those coming after us? They can figure it out themselves. That's what the world says. Those don't jive with our culture. But we have access to something better. We know that what God has for us when we live this faith out is better than what the world offers. It provides an alternative to the hate-filled, focus on me, if you don't agree with me, I'll just write you out kind of world. This offers meaning and purpose. It offers tangible ways of representing Jesus well. We're facing loads of challenges and loads of opportunities right now. And so this is how we meet those challenges and opportunities. We do it by allowing God to work in and through us, staying on this mission of representing Jesus well together. So, be here the next 6 weeks. If you can't watch online, take it in. Be here and wrestle with these with us, because they'll be challenging. Let them sink into our DNA as a church. Then when we launch those essentials classes, don't just write them off. Take the time to be there and see how living out this everyday life can make such a massive impact on your life and in our community. But don't let these things simply be intellectual. Everything we do here will run through prioritizing these 6 values. The same can be true for our lives. You can use them as a filter for how you live. This is the task we embark on in 2026. It's not a task for an individual or for a staff or for a few key leaders. It's for all of us because we are all the church. All of us together are the church. This reminds me of Colossians 3:17, that verse on the wall. If you back up to earlier in the verses, literally the whole chapter from 1 all the way through 17, but I'm going to start in 12. There are these verses that picture like what a church should look like, what should be the feeling and the kind of experience you get when you walk into and be with people who are following Jesus. It says this: since God chose you to be the holy people he loves, you must clothe yourselves with tenderhearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds us all together in perfect harmony. And let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your hearts. For as members of one body, you are called to live in peace and always be thankful. Let the message about Christ in all its richness fill your lives. Teach and counsel each other with all the wisdom he gives. Sing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs to God with thankful hearts. This is a picture of what we do every Sunday morning and all week long in community groups and student life on Wednesday nights and when you see each other about the week. Like, this is it. This is church. It's not here on a Sunday only. It's all week long, and this is what it looks like and what it feels like. And literally, we follow this pattern all week long. Even on Sunday mornings, the very next thing we're going to do is sing a song. It happens to be about Psalm 23. We're going to sing spiritual songs and psalms with thankful hearts. We get to do this together. We're on this mission together. There's so much good here. I am so excited about where God is leading us. I know it won't be easy, but we get to do it together. So, I'm going to pray right now, ask God to lead us and guide us, and then we're going to continue by singing some spiritual songs. Psalms, literally 23. Would you pray with me? Dear God, we're grateful for this morning. Thank you for allowing us to be in this warm place. But God, more than that, thank you for all the ways that you've worked in and through this church over the past year. So many people have had an opportunity to know your love, and it has changed them. And we have gotten to be a part of that, and that brings us so much joy. Yet we know we are faced with opportunities and challenges every direction we look. So God, help us to meet those moments. Help us to be a church that points to you above all else. Help us to be a church that values the things that are of you and guide us toward a life of loving and serving and caring for you and our church family and others. God, we pray that it would be in our bones, not just something we say or nice words, but that we would love you and serve you wholly and completely. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.